Hello, everybody. One person, three people. Okay, there we go. I was like, all right, we've got one person on. You're about to get a one-on-one coaching call. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining again in this series. We're talking about investing, STR investing during a recession, and different types of markets that you can successfully pull this off in. One common thread that I've seen throughout each of these sessions is that even though we're talking to professionals in different markets across the country, not every property in that market is doing, the best. And there's certain things to look for. There's not only attributes of the different markets across the country, but there's attributes of properties that perform well in those markets. For those who haven't watched, go back onto our YouTube or our Facebook channel and watch. We've talked about big popular markets. We've talked about uncommon markets, and we talked about emerging markets. And today I want to talk about markets that are specifically in middle America that you could say they're kind of emerging, but emerging on people's radar, investors' radar. I personally know 3 to 4 people who've invested in short-term rentals in these markets just this year. And so what I want to do is, and exactly, I want to have the same conversation that I personally had with them. Why? Why are you investing specifically in Kentucky? And so I wanted to bring Toni on. She's the go-to STR realtor in Kentucky. A little bit about her. So she is just knows everything about like most of Kentucky and the Bourbon Trail. I already forgot the name of it. It's what's the canyon there? When I bring her on, I'll ask her about it. But there's just so many different. Kentucky's pretty diverse. If you've never been there before, it's really beautiful. It's hilly, and it's such a beautiful area. And there's a lot of things and events, compression events that occur there. And I want to bring her on because, like I said, I know a lot of investors that have invested in Kentucky. She's helped some of them. And I want to dive into, let's explain what, first off, the numbers are great there. Why is it? What's going on? So I just want to welcome her. Hey, Toni, how you doing?
Hi.
I'm going to flip us
Good.
on the other side. There we go. Okay, great. So Toni, tell us, first off, I already forgot the name of that one. What's that canyon called? The red
It's not a canyon, it's a cave.
Oh, it's a cave. Okay, that's what it is. What's it called?
Mammoth Cave.
Mammoth Cave. That's right. And it's a national park. Isn't there a canyon too somewhere, like a small canyon? Or never mind. Okay, I'm gonna have to look that one up. There's something. While you're talking, I'll go. Yeah, but okay. Tell us about the diversity of Kentucky and what draws people to not only invest in but come to Kentucky. Like, what is the demand like there?
I think most people know Kentucky for the Kentucky Derby. That's the first weekend in May. And, the entire month of April leading up to that first weekend in May is full of festivals for, pre-Derby events. And then there's the week of Derby, and they have extended it to such a degree of where it's, we have Thurby now and, all these events that week. So those rates that week are just outrageous, especially the closer to Louisville you are. And then outside of that, although Louisville is a part of the Bourbon Trail, which is my supreme focus for all of this, Louisville is a part of that. But just, south of that and east of that is also the Bourbon Trail. So there's plenty of things. Horse country. You mentioned Mammoth Cave. Mammoth Cave is actually Kentucky's number one tourist attraction. It beats the Bourbon Trail.
Really?
And so I don't think that it will hang on to that title for very much longer because the Bourbon Trail is just growing exponentially and just by leaps and bounds, and all the growth in that industry that they are doing. When I talk to the bourbon executives and what?
Sorry, Shane in the comments, it's Red River Gorge. And I was like, that's
Red River Gorge. Yes.
Yeah. You're like, I threw you off the canyon. You're like, there's no canyons in Kentucky. Red River Gorge. Shane, I've actually talked to Shane about the Red River Gorge. We'll get to that one in a second.
Awesome.
But I mean, it's just like there's a lot of different things going on there. And you mentioned the Bourbon Trail. I mean, I really have, this is me personally, and I don't drink, but I really haven't heard of the Bourbon Trail until the last really 2 years. So is that kind of a new thing, or what's the history behind not just the Kentucky Derby, because we all know about that, but the Bourbon Trail and maybe some other places and destinations in Kentucky?
Yeah, so just in the last 20 years have they kind of coined the Bourbon Trail. And the majority, there's about 70 major distilleries that are in central Kentucky. Those are the ones that people know about. There's probably 200 distilleries in the state of Kentucky, but the major 70 are within central Kentucky. So you can get from one end of the Bourbon Trail to the other in about an hour and a half's time. And people do that all day long. If they start in Frankfort, they might start in Frankfort or start in Louisville. That's about an hour's drive in between those two towns, but you would hit up probably 10 to 15, maybe even more of the distilleries between those towns, because the distilleries are in clusters. So as long as when these guests are coming, they're booking their reservations at the distilleries, they're going to get the tours and the tastings and so on and so on. And you don't have to do a tour to get a tasting. So if today's Tuesday and I want to go to the Bourbon Trail on Saturday, you probably won't be able to get a tour, but you can get a tasting and you can get, walk the grounds and things like that. And there's so many of them. Each one offers a unique and different experience. So out of 70, you're not going to get the same thing at each one of those. It's going to be something different, which lends the opportunity for your guests to come back. They're going to bring other people, and it gives them, reason to come back more than one time.
Okay. Where are most of these people coming from?
They're coming from all over. I just had my first international guest about 2 months ago, and it seems like it's been a flood since then from across the pond. But really, I do get a lot of Michigan guests. I get a lot of Texas guests, California, Ohio, Florida. It just seems like it's also a central point for people who are traveling from Michigan and Ohio, and even coming from the South. If they're coming from Florida up, it's a central location for them to stop on their way to where they're going.
Gotcha. Okay. What has the demand been like since COVID? Has it picked up? Has it stayed the same? Like, we're talking like from pre-COVID. So pre-COVID to COVID now.
Even through COVID. So my first short-term rental, my first home, we bought in 2019, which was pre-COVID. COVID came and my houses were still 50+% booked through COVID. People weren't able to go to the distilleries, but they were choosing to do different things. Red River Gorge is one of them. That's not something that you need a guided tour to do. So they were just choosing different Kentucky attractions to go to during that time. Post-COVID, it has just continuously, every couple of days, I'm doing what Bill says, and I'm, changing my rates. Just messing with my photos, updating those, the properties that I manage, I'm constantly updating those. The rates are continuing to go up. I'm up probably on average $50 to $75 on the night since last year. And my 2023 rates are going up even more. So, you can't complain. I have never lowered my rates any more than, $10 or $12 on the night, just to see if I can get those orphan nights booked. But generally, I'm hugging that 80 to 90% occupancy rate a month.
Yeah. And, something else that I'm really seeing too with a lot of these areas in Kentucky, there's a lot of small STR markets there. So when we say small STR markets, Toni, you probably already know this, but the people listening, we say small, it's meaning less than 100 active like rentals, short-term rentals in that area. And there's a lot, especially along the Bourbon Trail. And they look very affordable, Toni. Is that a major attraction for a lot of investors? Is, look, these are affordable and they have pretty good occupancy rates?
Yes, absolutely. You can get, we don't have that many cabins, and when they come up on the market, they go fast, regardless if it's for a single family home or a short-term rental, but especially for a short-term rental. A 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom short-term rental could bring in $100,000. If it's nicely updated, great views, usually they're kind of in the rural areas, so they're bringing in the great view. But not to say that all 2 bedrooms would bring in 100 grand, but I have got probably a handful of them that I know of that are doing that. And then, 3 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms plus, they're bringing in more than that. So anytime that there's a cabin that comes on the market, I'm jumping on it for someone. Outside of that, it's going to just vary on your location and, the charm, the character of the home. Generally, a lot of our older homes do excellent because people love that charm. They have in their mind when they come to Kentucky that we live in farmhouses, that we live in, they already have, that type of property in their mind of what they want to stay in. So, a 3-bedroom brick ranch house, will it make money? Yes. But it's not usually what I steer my clients towards because it's just not something that, it's not the scroll stopper of what's going to attract guests coming to the area. You want it to be unique. You want it to be charming. And I think that's something that's across the United States. Everyone wants a unique property. They do the best.
So,
and also a hot tub. My clients laugh at me because I should be a hot tub seller. But it keep us booked in the wintertime. We have seasons here. And so fall, winter, and spring, we have cooler nights. And because of that, I don't lower my nightly rates through those months. While other people are struggling to, be occupied in other markets and lowering their rates, you get a hot tub and you're good to go. People love that.
Yeah, I really like that. You touched on something there that I think that we need to dive into a little bit. I mean, I'm trying to pull up some data of just Mammoth Cave area, but if I'm looking at, because I wanted to see this, I mean, if I'm looking at the difference between the revenue percentiles in STR Insight, so properties that are performing in the 75th to 90th percentile for like 2 and 3 bedrooms, like you were saying, are going to be around $75,000 to $100,000. Properties that are in the 50th percentile for the same houses are doing between $30,000 to maybe $50,000. So like the average or less. So there's a big gap between the two. And from what I'm understanding, you're attributing that to the property types, right? Or the obviously quality of property, but the type of property as well. So cabin or farmhouse or something unique. Is there anything else that maybe stands out in Kentucky specifically that you've seen that does well?
Well, I mean, there's guests that want to stay in small town downtowns. So they want to be able to walk to the coffee shop. They want to be able to walk to the local pub or restaurants and things like that. And that's fine. But there's just as many rural properties where they can't walk to anything that do just as well. They want that privacy. They don't mind the 15-minute drive into town or the 30-minute drive to the nearest distillery. I don't know of any of the homes that I personally have or that I manage, and outside of that I have helped clients with that bring in less than 70 grand a year.
Really?
And it doesn't, I mean, and that, I'm trying to think, the lowest priced home is probably, without having to do a true remodel, is probably $220,000. Some of my clients, they don't mind remodeling a bathroom, taking on a kitchen, outside of paint and flooring and things like that. But, just to get that up and running, plus their furnishings, that's a pretty average return.
Are most of the homes older? Or are you seeing like a lot of new builds? Okay, so older homes, gotcha.
Most of them are. I don't really lend or I don't tend to go in the direction with my clients to buy new builds. Most of them are in neighborhoods, which I kind of steer clear from because of HOAs, of course. And it just doesn't have that character of what Kentucky represents. That new build people can get anywhere. When people come to Kentucky, they don't want to feel like they're in Los Angeles. They don't want to feel like they're, in any other place. So I always try to, implement as much Kentucky and Southern hospitality into these homes. I want, if it's a home built in the 1800s, not to say that I want it filled full of furniture from the 1800s. No, that's not the case. There can be a really beautiful mix between, old and new, and just mixing that style together, because that's what people love. They're going to see those pictures. And just like with regular traditional real estate, pictures are what's going to bring people in to buy your house. So the pictures on Airbnb or Vrbo or wherever your platform is, that's what's going to bring people to book your house. And if those pictures are good, and if it's interesting and you've got unique pieces that stand out, that's what's going to bring your guests. And so, my farmhouse in particular, I've got a silly hand painted cow pillow that I bought from a lady out of North Carolina. And it's a hand painted canvas pillow, and it's on one of my beds in my bedrooms. And I have had a handful of people literally say they booked my house, my farmhouse, because of that cow pillow. I mean, who books a house for a cow pillow?
Right.
So it's things like that, but it represents something that, pulled at someone's heartstrings, that made them feel like Kentucky. It's a country pillow. They want to feel that, and just nicer furnishings, of course, newer updated bathrooms and kitchens, but it could still have the charm of an old home. They love the hardwood floors, or, arched doorways, things like that, the warm wood tones. So just implementing those features into your properties. I'm not saying that that's how it has to be at every house, but the more character that can be provided, people love that.
So let me ask you this. If I'm a prospective client and I'm looking into one of these markets, is it better to have the proximity or the type of property? So like that quality and charm, that perfect house or whatever that every guest wants to stay in, versus being in the perfect location. Which one would you choose?
I think it's going to be definitely the property itself. You can be 20 or 30 minutes into the countryside and that property do extremely well. I have a friend, I don't manage this particular house, but she is out in the boonies per se, but it's a cabin and it does extremely well. And, it being a cabin, people eat those up, and she just continues to raise her rates, and people are continuing to book it. So I think the sky is the limit for certain places. My next one is what I call the Burr Barn, and it really was an active working dairy barn in the 1960s. And then sometime cool. In the 1990s, someone made it into a home, and we bought it last year. We've been renovating it, and it'll go live early 2023. But it's unique, and I think it's going to do really well. But it's probably 25.
Just don't go forward.
Sorry, someone's at the car. It's probably 25 minutes to town, and but people love that area, and I look forward to that. So I am in a Cracker Barrel parking lot. I just want to tell the audience I'm trying to get home before the ice storm
Kentucky comes. Yeah,
and I split my family into Cracker Barrel. So but yeah, it's just the unique property is what's going to bring your income drive higher.
Yeah, I love that. It's interesting because I think that's true in a lot of markets across the country. However, from discussions I've had, someone said they love Crackle Barrel. Yeah, we're getting that's great.
We're on the road headed back to Kentucky.
Right. From previous discussions I've had with other realtors on here, it really kind of depends on the market. Some markets you do want to have that brand new property that, like for example, in the Smoky Mountains, some of the beach markets, you want to have that new property. Being super unique or Southern or all these other things doesn't really apply, because that's not what people are looking for there. They're like, if they go to a beach property, they want the access, the proximity to the beach. They're in the mountains, they want the mountain view. However,
and
in
I'm
Kentucky,
going to retrain my clients with that mindset, because they might already be invested in Gulf Shores or in Destin. And so this is new to them because it has piqued their interest, but I'm having to retrain their thought process because most of them have never thought of owning a 100-year-old house. And some of them honestly are scared to death of owning a 100-year-old house. And the newer the better to them, because that's what they're already invested in, and that's safe to them. And so for me, telling them, oh no, we're going to kind of go over here and do this, and this is going to do well, it really is retraining their thoughts and showing them what that looks like.
And it's learning to adapt in a new market, like taking what you think, it doesn't apply to these areas over here that are doing well for a completely different reason. So Ryan Duffy asked this great question. Are your guests, are they driving into this area? Or are they actually flying in? Like, what's kind of the mix there?
I think it's probably close to 50-50. I have lots and lots of guests that do both. And, they do have to have a car, whether it's a rental car or their own, to get to where they're going, because there's no walking distance to any of the distilleries. You have to have, they're in clusters. So while you might hit up, Buffalo Trace in Frankfurt, and then you're going to drive 15 minutes at the most over to Lawrenceburg and hit up Wild Turkey and Four Roses, you still have to have a car to get around and drive. There are tour buses where you can park at certain locations, or private tours where people pick you up and take you to the distilleries and things like that you can book in advance. But for the most part, you're not going to be able to just crawl back to the house. Right. Because the distilleries, all of the ones that I can really think of, they're in rural areas. Some of them are a little bit closer to towns, but they're really in blue collar working towns, very small town USA. So, and that's another part of the charm that people are loving when investing here, is that they come and I take them through these areas and I'm able to show them, what small town, mid-America looks like, and they see all the historic buildings and, the little coffee shops and things like that. And they're just falling in love with that as well, just as their guests do. So it's been funny. It's kind of like watching a kid at Christmas when I have guests come to town, or not guests, but clients come to town, and we, go look at houses, because they just fall in love instead of just me doing a FaceTime or, videos of certain things or houses that they want to see.
Yeah. And I think that's all part of like the experience, right? The guest is there to something that a lot of people have a hard time with is people aren't necessarily coming just to stay in your house. They want to experience something. They're going to that market to experience. And I think that is an added bonus experience to what they're getting and what they're coming for.
That's
so I really like that.
I tell my clients that often, is that you want the home to be an extension of their experience. They're going to go to these distilleries, they're going to go to the Derby, and they're going to get an excellent experience at any of those. You want your home to be an extension of that. And that way, when they go back home, they're going to tell their friends, family, cousins, whoever, when you go to Kentucky, you got to go, you need to stay here. You want that to be just as important to your guest as where they're going while they're here. And I scream from the mountaintop that to everyone.
No, I like that. I really like that. And I think that applies perfectly to this market. Another question that we got here that's interesting is, what are the regulations like in Kentucky? Are they pretty strict?
Louisville is our most regulated area. It's still doable. They require 600 feet between two short-term rentals. That's their biggest thing that they adhere to. Outside of that, Bardstown, which is the bourbon capital of the world, they're the second most regulated, and they have a 400-foot rule in the city limits of Bardstown. Outside of that, most of the counties are very welcoming, very encouraging. Again, these are small town blue collar communities where these distilleries are, and they're welcoming that money coming in. They're welcoming that tourism coming in. They want the people there. They want people to shop at their little boutique shops or their little restaurants and things like that. So they are very kind and considerate and welcoming outside of those two counties. But again, Bardstown and Louisville, they're still doable. You just have to, do a little bit more research when we're searching for properties to find the ones that are eligible.
Yeah. So with that being said, I mean, a lot of people, there's a growing interest in bear with me, guys, Louisville, right? and I always get called out for the pronunciating of Louisville. So there's a lot of people interested in investing there. So tell me a little bit more. You kind of gave me the guidelines for the regulations, but tell me more. How do you go about looking for properties there? What should someone do if they're interested in investing in that area, or parts of the
So Louisville, they have done, because that's a metro city, it's our biggest city that we've got. They have done great with giving us a website where we can put in a particular address. So before I even send an address to a client for a certain property, I'll do all the sifting for properties, and I'll put that address, if it's in Louisville, into that website to see if it's eligible. If it's not eligible, I don't even send it to my client, obviously. But if it's eligible, then I kind of dig a little deeper and just see what, obviously the location is going to be number one, but just seeing what else is going on around there. And you can even call the county and see if there are any other applications that are pending or that have been filed, because while I might not see it on that website where I put that address into, it's always good to make that phone call to see if that address, within 600 feet of that, if there's a pending application, because what the website doesn't tell you is if there is a pending application. So that would not, be a very good thing if I sold you a house and there was already a pending application for someone within that 600 feet. So that's always a big deal. And I, try to do my best with my due diligence with my clients, and I, give them that opportunity as well to, call and kind of dig if they're willing to do that.
Okay. That's awesome that you know that. How did you, and I probably should ask you at the beginning, and I didn't, but how did you get started investing in Kentucky? I mean, have you lived there your entire life? What's your story?
Yep. I grew up in Louisville, and when I was in my 20s and had my own kids, I moved outside of Louisville because the school systems were a little bit better in the community that I moved to. And I didn't get my real estate license until I was in my late 30s. People will read that in my chapter that I'm contributing to in Reputation Driven. So I was in my late 30s when I finally got back around to myself. I was a stay-at-home mom for the longest time, and I was staging houses because I have an interior design background. And so I was doing that, and I knew that I wanted to get back to that real estate side because I've always had that passion. Mm-hmm. So after my kids grew up a little bit and I was able to kind of circle back around to myself, I got my license. And then 2019, I begged my husband basically to take his bonus at his W-2 job to purchase a house. And, we did not know what it was going to do. Matter of fact, I'll just share this little tidbit real quick. AirDNA told us that particular house in Lawrenceburg was going to make about $3,000 a month. And at the time, our mortgage on that house to this day is about $1,000 a month, and, a couple hundred for utilities and whatnot. We thought, okay, well, that's, gives us a little bit of extra cash, and that's fine. And we thought it would be a house for us to go to on the weekends with our kids. And, it's not. I've never had a $3,000 a month since 2019. This is a proven point of AirDNA having skewed information, because from 2019 to now, one, I've never had a $3,000 a month. Two, if I put that address in today, it still tells me $3,000, which is incredible, because when we look at I think Tyler said this on when he was here with you. When you look at your comps, you have to really look at your comps on what would be comparable to what type of home you're offering. If that house looks like grandma died last week and someone just listed it on Airbnb or VRBO, that's not your comp. That's not your competition. And you have to really, adjust for that. I think, and that's true for any market, that, if you have a new kitchen and you've got, beautiful furniture and things like that you're going to provide, your rate isn't going to be $120 a night. Your rate might be $300 a night. So you have to know how to make those adjustments and know that you should make those adjustments, because I'm not comparing my houses to grandma's house.
Right. No, I love that. If I can interject here, I mean, I got to know, how much does that house make per month?
That house averages $7,000 a month.
Wow.
And I've had much higher months, and but I've never had anything below 5, and that's like January and February are maybe our slow times. So even January and February, I'm still, nothing less than 5,000 since 2019. And so that house is my, I call it my cash cow to this day.
Yeah. I think that's really important what you just said there. Again, like reemphasizing something Tyler and I talked about is like understanding, property A that could be the same floor plan, bed, bath count, everything is not the same as property B, even though they have all that. And it's because, like you said, it's the quality, it's the design, the charming factors. Is it unique? The property type. There's a lot of things that when we try to take that, the address and plug it into a free calculator, it's just not going to give us what we truly want to know. We really need to call somebody like you, an expert in that market, and also look at comparable properties, preferably on STR Insights, but comparable properties data, and find true comps to understand what that property can do. And why I say call you as well is not just because, oh, you know, I want to promote you, but simply because, like, I firmly believe that it's not just enough to have the data. You have to have a professional who knows that market too.
Yeah. And there have been times, I mean, you can ask any of my clients or people who I'm working with, you can tell me that your budget is $1 million. I'm going to show you houses that are not $1 million. I'm not making you spend $1 million. And there have been $1 million houses that I've said, we have to walk away from this.
Yeah.
You know, and that's very few and far between where, you know, people get a real estate agent who aren't trying to make that $1 million sale. If I know it's wrong and I know that it's not going to, one, perform as well as you might think it might, or that, you know, it's going to need another $200,000 in renovations that I know you don't want to do, I'm upfront about that. You know, listen, this is not the right property for you. Yes. Or even if the location is great, if you don't have another 200,000 to put into it, or, you know, you don't want to, we got to keep moving. Or I'm going to show you a $600,000 house that might do just as much return on your investment as the $1 million house. So do you really would just want to spend $1 million, or would you rather spend 600 and have your holding costs less? So it's not always about the commission with us real estate agents. And I really, you know, have driven that home with a lot of my clients and, you know, one of them, he laughs all the time. He's like, Toni, you showed us $300,000 houses and $1 million houses, and you were just as adamant about both ends of the spectrum. I want your investment to be the best investment for you as my client, because, you know, that's what's most important. We're all in this together as investors. And if your, you know, $300,000 house can make $100,000, you don't need to spend $1 million. I'll sell you a $300,000 house all day long if I know if that's what it's going to do.
Yeah, no, that's I love that. You know, especially if your focus is growing your portfolio and getting that cash on cash return up high. Yeah, go for the $300,000 house. Last like hard question from me, I guess. I know these are kind of been softballs here, but look, a lot of the markets are small, and so one of the common concerns, we got this question in the comments here. You know, what are resources like cleaners, maintenance folks? Is that difficult to find? Like, how do you do that in these small markets?
You've got me. I've done a lot of the footwork for you there and a lot of that for my clients. But even if it's not me and it's someone else, you know, for me, I have built teams in about 6 different counties. I've got maintenance men. I've got cleaners. I'm constantly building on to my cleaning team. You know, I've got about 4 or 5 of them right now that I keep in rotation. That way, if one's sick, one has a flat tire, you know, just, you know, one quits. I just had one quit because she got, you know, a better job, which I don't know how she could possibly get a better job. But, you know, things come up and, you know, if I only have one cleaner, then I'm in trouble, you know, when these houses are getting booked. So anyway, I've done a lot of the footwork. I, you know, have a lot of referrals. I have built a lot of networking here in these communities. I go to the board meetings. I speak at them. I you know, I'm on the phone every other month or so with, you know, bourbon industry executives, tourism directors. I've got a meeting in January with the Kentucky tourism director. She's as high as they go. And that gives me the ins and outs of, you know, every county and community that I can possibly get into, and they know me, they know my face. So when I call them and I say, hey, I need a so-and-so type person, I need a plumber, I need a, you know, whatever, do you have recommendations? You know, my cleaners and other people, they are able to give me, you know, other resources other than themselves, or if they, you know someone who I would appreciate that can do a good job. So even if it's, you know, a market like Mammoth Cave, I don't live in Mammoth Cave. I'm about an hour and a half outside of that, but I've got a team that can assist anyone who is looking in that area, who I can at least get you off the ground with. And if you choose to use them, you can. And if not, feel free to build your own team.
Yeah, for sure.
You know,
Have
so
you,
but I
was
feel like I've got
was it difficult though? Like, how hard is it to find people in those areas?
I haven't found it to be that hard. And again, it's just a lot of, you know, resource. You know, if you go on the buy sell trade on Facebook, I've found 3 of my best cleaners from those groups on Facebook, and they're, you know, they come with referrals. I interview them, I bring them to the house. I even, you know, give them one of the homes after a checkout where I know there's not a check-in the next day or two, and, you know, let them clean it. And then I go back and we go back together and I say, okay, this needs to be done. And it's not being harsh on them. It's just showing them that a short-term rental cleaning looks a little bit different than maybe a regular residential home cleaning. So it literally has to be perfect. And walking them through that from start to finish, it's like with any job, you're going to be trained on how to do that. So I want them to be trained, and they know how to, you know, come up strong in their own way, because I tell them often, if I don't have them, I'm not me. And you know, I incentivize them every couple of months. They get extra cash, they get, you know, gift cards or something. I want to know about their families. They're not just my cleaners. So I think that that's a big part with this industry, is just keeping your people happy, because then they will feel invested. You want your cleaners and your people to feel invested in this with you.
Yeah, I love
That's
that.
my
That's great. And it's good to hear that you've got teams. I mean, that's kind of been the struggle for me in some of the smaller areas I've invested in is, okay, my cleaner and everybody else is like hit or miss, and it's hard. And I have to overpay to have the right team in place. So I want to recap because I want to respect your time, and I know you gotta hit the road soon. But there's a couple things that you said about about your markets, obviously in Kentucky. But I think that it stands out to me. These things stand out to me as can be replicated in other markets that aren't as common, that would be emerging or just kind of growing in and of themselves. And so one thing you said is, you know, it's kind of the riches and the niches. I know you didn't say that phrase, but you said these markets have unique factors in play, like the distilleries, the small town feels, the experiences, and being, you know, having your I love what you said about your property is an extension, or your STR is an extension of the experience. I don't know if I worded that right, but yeah, that's I love that though. That made sense in my head. Another thing too, I loved is the year-over-year numbers are higher, right, in your market, and so that means growth. Everyone listening, I mean, that is awesome. A lot of markets are not seeing year-over-year growth. They're seeing year-over-year decline. Because of COVID jacked everything up. But these markets, they probably were a little bit slower during COVID, and now they're going up because people can travel to them in groups and things, because of the distilleries, the wineries, or whatever.
I do want to point out that our market along the Bourbon Trail is mainly marketed towards adults. A lot of the distilleries don't permit children or underage people. You can bring your dogs because dogs are permitted at the distilleries, but children are not. And so, you know, Mammoth Cave, that is more family driven. Red River Gorge, that's more family driven. But the Bourbon Trail itself, if you're looking for a more adult driven market, it's a perfect opportunity for this, because these people are generally older, they're wealthy, they're, you know, they have more expendable money than your 20-something-year-old Panama City partiers. And, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. You know, Florida's great, and that's a great market to be in. It's profitable, but here we get a lot more of a distinguished and sophisticated group of people coming to our houses, and they're gone all day long. Your house is hardly used. They get up in the morning, they have their coffee, and they're gone for the entire day, which is also why I do the hot tubs in my properties, because they're gone all day. They've been walking, they've been drinking probably. They come back, they get in the hot tub, and they call it a day, and then they go to bed. And so, you know, my cleaners oftentimes laugh, because they say, Toni, if your beds had not been slept in, we would not have known that anyone had been in this house. Right. So there's beauty in that, and there's, you know, appreciation in that, because I'm not
less wear and tear.
I'm not switching out my couch every 6 months, or, you know, worrying about somebody puking on my sofa or rug, or, you know, things like that. So those things are, you know, hold their own value.
Different, it's a different audience, different clientele, guests that's staying there, higher quality. I mean, there are other markets, it's not necessarily distilleries. It could be wineries.
Yeah.
There's a lot of other markets out in the country that have that feel, the small town feel, and cater to a kind of a higher clientele, if you could say, older clientele even. And so I like that because that's unique.
Mhm.
And uniqueness and experience means money, right? So so I would encourage you guys listening, not only to check out Kentucky, because I think it's a great up and coming market in terms of being known. It's already doing well. Tony's, laid out some of the numbers. I'm looking at STR insights. I'm seeing, hey, a lot of these numbers, what she's saying are aligning with it and supporting everything she's saying. And so the market's already doing well. It's just a lot of people haven't been talking about it on social media. Don't know why. Maybe they will now. So anyway, I'm going to put up real quick. So if you guys have questions, please put them in the chat before we take off. But I'm just going to put this up right now. If you are interested in contacting Toni to hear more about Kentucky, the Bourbon Trail, even Louisville, please email her and reach out to her. She apparently knows everything about most of Kentucky and the markets there, has teams there. I love that. Those are the things you guys need to be asking when you talk to realtors in these markets. Do they own? Do they manage STRs in the markets? Do they how long have they been in that market selling properties? Do they have people they can resources? Do they know the regulation? That one's huge. Every person I've spoken to, I mean, they could just bore you to death with all that. They know these regulations in and out, and you've got to know somebody, or if you're working with a realtor, they have to know that stuff, or you could end up spending a lot of time, or two, be in trouble. So I really like that Toni knows her stuff with that. So that's a really strong attribute you have there. So other than that, Toni, I want to thank you for being on. Do you have any, I guess, closing remarks or anything you wanted to say?
Feel free to reach out. I have, lasting relationships with my clients. It goes long past the closing table. If you need help with something all throughout the transaction, I am there with you alongside. And long past the closing table, I am helping clients still, getting what they need done, getting furniture delivered, getting their teams built and lined up for things that they need. If they need a plumber or they're redoing, IGC projects sometimes for clients. But, I'm happy to help. I'm happy to answer your questions and help you discover Kentucky.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much, Toni, for being on here and sharing your insights in Kentucky. And I'm hoping that this series, guys, we're covering markets across the country, but the idea is to show you the attributes you need to be looking for in these markets that are doing well. There's a lot of markets out there. There's so much data and information. It's really hard to identify. And you need to know what the key attributes are, and then you need to know the key professionals. And so I'm hoping to provide that to you guys with the professionals and then give you the attributes to look out for. So anyway, thanks again, Toni, and thanks everybody for watching. And I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.